ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Tennessee Ralph, the newly elected mayor of Hickory Tavern, South Carolina. He's just got back from one of those skull-cracking town council meetings, and he's going to tell it like it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Tennessee Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Announcer, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Mr. Announcer, I'm going to tell it like it is. That is the best I can, because you know how these town council meetings are. You know, we go down at those meetings and we have a little drink here and then a little drink there, and then first thing you know, don't nobody know what's going on.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just what did you talk about? Did you discuss anything like the teachers' and city employees' salaries? And by the way, did you want to bring up anything about the Nixon freeze? Tell us about that.
Well, Mr. Announcer, I am glad you brought that up, because you see, we was down at that town council meeting, and these school teachers, they was down there. They had their picket signs walking up and down the streets, and these even the street cleaners, they was down there too in them white uniforms. In fact, a couple of them street cleaners chased me down the street about a half block trying to throw a net over me. Of course, I guess they was street cleaners. At least that's what they said they were. But anyhow, getting back to this Nixon freeze, you know, these school teachers, they all want a pay raise.
Well, Mr. Mayor, this freeze, how has it affected your family life? Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, I am glad you asked me that, because you take my wife, now she's back home in the kitchen. She's cooking up me some beans and bread. And you know what? Every time she sets a table, she puts me deeper into the red.
Mr. Mayor, what about the price of steel, automobiles, and luxuries?
Now, I am glad you brought that up, because you take these steel workers, they all got a pay raise, and you know, the automobile makers, they got a raise too.
Well, I hate to interrupt, but our time is up. But in closing, I'd like to ask you, what do you think about disc jockeys and radio personnel?
Now, Mr. Announcer, of all the questions you have asked me since we started this interview, that is one question that I am glad you brought up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your local DJ, Tommy Patak, coming to you from radio station DTNP. And these call letters stand for Don't Trust No Politician. Now, folks, today we're going to have another one of our live on-the-spot interviews between myself and our local politician, who is none other than Mr. Tennessee Ralph, who is the newly elected mayor of the little town of Hickory Tavern, South Carolina. Now, Tennessee had just got back from another one of them skull-cracking town council meetings, and he's going to tell it like it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Tennessee Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Announcer. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know, Mr. Announcer, I ain't seen you in quite some time. I believe the last time I saw you was when I was on your other program, and you know, you was asking me all them questions about the Nixon freeze. And, you know, I'm about thawed out from that Nixon freeze now, and I just wondered what we're going to talk about this time.
Well, Mr. Mayor, since everybody seemed to like what you had to say on our last program about the Nixon freeze, we just thought you'd like to come back so we could ask you some questions about the presidential election of 1972. Now, Tennessee, as mayor of Hickory Tavern, we assume that you come in contact with political figures who have different views from yours, and would like to get your opinion or thoughts you may have concerning the upcoming presidential election of '72.
Now, Mr. Announcer, I'm glad you asked me that, but and I'm really not no authority on these presidential elections, but in this election of '72, they got so many candidates, they don't know what to do. No one knows just which one's going to be the best. Some of them say it's going to be Senator Henry Jackson, and some of them, I think they like Governor West. And some of my friends say it's Mr. Ernest Hollins, and some of them talk to, they say it's going to be Governor Rocky. And everybody knows old Humphrey, he feels plumb cocky.
Mr. Mayor, what about Senator Kennedy, Mr. Reagan, and Muskie? Where do you think they stand in this race?
Now, Mr. Announcer, I'm glad you brought that up because, we've been talking around the office there, and some folks say that Senator Kennedy, he's floating right out in the middle of the stream. So if he gets investigated this time, he's going to come out clean. Some of them say it's going to be Governor Reagan, and some of them, they like this Mr. Senator Muskie. And, old Hubert H. Humphrey, he done got plumb rusty. Now, some of these people, they don't like Governor Wallace, and everybody knows that he's the kind of man to keep all them cats on their toes.
Tennessee, now what about Governor Romney, Nixon and Spiro, LBJ, and some of the others?
Now, I am glad you asked me that, because these modern-day elections, they done got so posh that even old Romney said his brain got washed. And some folks say that Mr. Nixon and old Spiro, they can win this election with ease if they can ever throw out that 90-day freeze. But, this campaign broth, how it is, it just keeps getting thicker and thicker. The Democrats, they say they got Mr. McGovern and Mayor Lindsay, and they holding old Birch Bayh for a kicker. But there's so many in the running who want to win a show or this place that LBJ, he dropped slap out of the race.
Mr. Mayor, I hate to interrupt, but our time is about up. Before closing, there's one more question I'd like to ask you. Have you decided just how you're going to vote this time, and do you have any advice for all of our listeners on how to cast their vote?
Have I got any advice? Well, I am here to tell you right now I have got some advice on how to vote. But you know what? When it comes to these old politicians, they're all about alike. And some folks don't know just who the heck they like. Because, they make these fancy speeches with a smile on their face, and they forget all about morals in a presidential race. And I'll tell you something else. Them cats got their hair slicked down, their shoes all shine. They got a sharp tongue and a dull axe to grind. And you know what? When you watch television, them cats on nearly every show, they just ain't no use listening to the radio. So if you've been wondering how to cast your vote, I've got a good solution, which I'd be glad to quote. Now, folks, here's my solution how to not get fooled. If you don't like elephants, just vote for the doggone mule. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good night.